I needed to go and show myself that I was standing up, as it says in the film, standing up in the place where I fell down.
This film is really extraordinary. Eliza, I wonder, when did you make the decision to film what you were experiencing in these moments after the attack?
A few days after the attack, Salman was seeming more like himself, and he asked me if I would make some portraits of him to document what was happening because there was so much going on. And so rather than just take snaps, I decided to have my professional cameras sent up to where we were in the trauma ward. And so we then began to kind of have these video diaries and conversations that we were making purely for ourselves. In a moment of trauma, we could still be storytellers with the camera, and that felt really important to me.
Salman, when did you first view the footage, and what was that experience like for you?
Well, for a long time, she wouldn't let me watch it. Not until I was quite well underway to feeling better. I mean, it was after I'd left the hospital and I was back home and feeling a bit more like myself. And she finally agreed to give me permission to watch. And so we set up a screen and projector at home and I watched it. And I think she was right, actually, because I think the fact that I was feeling better made it possible for me to watch the footage without getting very upset. I felt that I had the me who was watching the footage had some distance from the me who was in the film. And so it was pretty shocking, though. I looked worse than I thought I did.
And when did you get involved, Alex? How did you get involved? And did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them?
Salman and Eliza reached out to me to discuss, whether I'd be interested, of course. As I said, I was interested immediately, of course. And then we discussed it. And the first question I asked them was, why don't you guys do it? But they felt strongly that they needed somebody with outside perspective, that they were too close to the material. And they had seen some of my work. We got on well at the first meeting, and so off I went.
And how did you kind of figure out, all of you, I suppose, the shape of the story? Because on paper, I thought it was going to be about your recovery, and it definitely is, but it seemed to me like it was as much about your relationship. And I wonder how that sort of got developed.
Well, I think it really was Alex's idea that we needed to flesh out the story and have it not just limited to an account of a crime, that it should also be a human story about a relationship. And also, actually, Alex went back into the past and sort of told the story of my earlier life as a writer as well, and that was entirely his doing.
Yeah, there was a sense that, there a long time ago, I'd seen a wonderful TV series by Dennis Potter called The Singing Detective. And it moves very effortlessly back and forth between actually a physical recovery in the present, memories of childhood, and also fiction making. And it seemed to me that was a good way to talk about Salman as not only the person who's recovering from this terrible wound, but as an artist and a writer. And actually, I would say, interestingly, the book also does that to some extent. There's a kind of free association quality that I think is super important.
When did you first decide, Salman, that you wanted to write the book too? And what was the motivation behind that as well?
Well, I think the motivation for the two projects, the documentary and the book, is the same, really, which is that I felt that this was such a large thing sitting in the middle of my life that it was really impossible to think about anything else until I dealt with it. So the book and the film were really the way of making the journey of dealing with the attack and its consequences and being able to move past it. So it was healing in that way.
You say move past it. Have you been able to move past it?
Well, not entirely. I'm still lacking an eye. But yeah, I think I pretty much emotionally I feel past it.
Is it you're coming to a place like Sundance? You're in a very public forum. Do you have safety concerns? Do you worry about coming out and
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't have to go into details of security, but there is some security. But that's unfortunately now necessary because of the attack.
But even beyond that, is there a psychological component?
No, not really, no. I mean, I think I realized that I'm kind of tougher than I thought I was.
Have you been able to watch the film, and what was that experience like for both of you?
We both saw it about what, a week ago, 10 days ago?
Yeah, we saw it
Okay,
right
just-
after New Year's.
Just as it was finally finished. We had seen an earlier stage, a kind of rough first assembly, but then we saw the finished thing. And I mean, it's enormously powerful, I think. Just if I could step outside myself and look at it as somebody watching a movie, it's a very powerful film.
Eliza, what about you?
I think for me, it was this kind of collision of emotions, revisiting, suddenly having flashbacks in my mind as I was looking at the film. And also, I'm in the film, I'm in some very vulnerable and kind of shattered moments. And so I'm looking at this woman on the screen who I know is me. And at the same time, I have this stronger kind of detachment from her. And so seeing the journey of our experience in Alex's vision, though, was a great comfort to me. And the film, to me, is excellent. And so the craft and the master storytelling, the animation, even the musical score, it's all come together in such excellence and humanity that was really assuring to me. And when when it finished, I thought, thank goodness we trusted the right person with our story. But it was very difficult to watch certain parts of it. And I think my own difficulty watching it will be shared by people who watch this film and understand how necessary it is for artists to write and express themselves, and actors and film and musicians, that we all need these stories and these voices to keep going as forces of good in the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is about free speech in a very dramatic way, and the attacks on it. I mean, how are you all feeling about that at this particular moment in history, too?
Well, I just think that there are all sorts of assaults on free speech right now, and maybe this story helps people think about that, and understand how valuable it is. One of the reasons why people like me came to live in America was the First Amendment. And its enormous emphasis on freedom of expression. And to see that under threat is very depressing. But I hope this film will dramatize the importance of that value, the importance of what is enshrined in the First Amendment.
What about you, Alex?
I feel very similarly. I mean, I think a lot of this film, I think having this film out now is terribly important in terms of endorsing the very idea of free speech, but also in this moment when we're under assault, I mean, now literally under assault for speaking our minds by our own government. It reminds us not only of the necessity and importance of speaking out, but also how we can't allow ourselves to devolve into a state of rage where we lose our own humanity. That's the one thing we can't let this kind of state violence do to us.
I wonder how you feel about the way that the media industry has responded to these attacks on free speech. When you look at the way that corporations, many of which own news organizations, have responded to the Trump administration, for example.
Well, it's shameful in terms of the way that many of the mainstream media organizations have bent the knee, but also it's very much I would say, a program by the administration to make sure that everybody's towing the line, that the use of lawsuits, the use of now in the middle of trying to steer this acquisition of Warner Brothers to see if they can get the Ellisons to own it, so that they can consolidate their power. Orwell talked about this. It's a playbook.
Salman, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think it's a playbook that's in use not only in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
In my country of origin, India, the administration there, with its billionaire allies, has done something very similar, buying the media. And there's actually very few big media anymore who are independent of the administration, thanks to this investment in the media by billionaire allies of the administration. So it's, this is a global phenomenon. It's not just here.
I thought one of the very interesting parts of the documentary is when you actually go back to the place that you were attacked. And I wonder who had the idea to do that, and what was that experience like?
Me. No, it actually quite early on in the process of recovery, it became something that was just a bee in my bonnet, that I felt I needed to go and show myself that I was standing up, as it says in the film, standing up in the place where I fell down. I felt that would just be psychologically important for me. And I think for both of us going back there, it was very important. Eliza, of course, hadn't been there on the day of the attack, so she was seeing the place for the first time.
Yeah, what was the experience like for you, Eliza?
It was very shocking to me because it's such a beautiful place. It's such a rich community there in Chautauqua. And so not only in my perspective as I was looking around and thinking what happened to my husband, I also was understanding that a really strong and lovely community had been completely devastated and also traumatized by this kind of terrorism that came in and decimated them, And so for me, I'm looking around and I kept thinking, it's so shocking that it's so beautiful, and yet this really dark violence happened here. And that my hope is that the community, comes together and heals and keeps going. But it was profound to go with Salman back and go into this space, which I had only seen little snippets of it online, kind of in, news, just small things. So to come out and walk out on that stage with him and have him kind of go through it, I began shaking. It was so overwhelming to me, really.
If I could just add on top of that, from a filmmaking perspective, I think it was sort of obvious to us that was going to be the end of the film. There was a circularity to it, and obviously a point of destination, and as part of the recovery. But when we started the film, while there had been images taken by members of the audience of sort of the scrum after the attack, the footage of the attack had not been released and still has not, but we were able to obtain it in the course of making the film, the actual footage of the attack, and it seemed suddenly very powerful to intersperse Salman's memories with the actual footage that up to that point in the film you haven't seen.
I hadn't seen it.
You hadn't seen it?
I hadn't seen it until I saw the final cut.
Right.
Did you have any debate about whether or not to include the footage of the attack?
No. No, I thought it was very important to include it.
Why did you think it was important?
Because I think people should see what terrorism looks like, and experience it, and that's good information.
Alex, I also wanted to ask you, I saw that you're doing a documentary about Luigi Mangione, and I wondered what interested you in that topic.
I probably shouldn't say too much about it because the film's still in process, but I think that it was a powerful cultural moment, and as such needed to be investigated. Maybe I should leave it there.
And this is, as you can see by our branding, presented by Audible. So I wonder if any of you have a podcast or an audiobook that you would recommend people listen to.
Well, I think Audible chose Eliza's memoir, Flower Bearers, as one of their books of the month. So that's something to recommend.
Thank you.
Alex?
I'm recommending it too. But the only other thing I would say is I've greatly enjoyed in days recently a podcast called Search Engine.
Eliza, anything that you would recommend?
I would recommend right now, I've just been listening on Audible because I'm doing their Listens program. I would recommend Lonely Crowds by Stephanie Wambugu. I think it was really beautiful to hear it and listen to it recently for Audible.
Well, thank you all so much, and congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
Thank you.